Hello, everyone. This is Tim Stein from the American Foundation for Addiction Research. Today, we've got Jake Porter from Daring Ventures joining us. Uh, One, we're going to talk about research and why is research essential for the work that we're doing in sex addiction and betrayal trauma. And also, I want to hear a little bit more about Daring Ventures, what you guys do and what you have to offer the
Awesome.
community out there.
Yeah.
So let
Look
me
forward
let
to
me
it.
just throw my standard question at you, Jake.
Okay.
Research into sex addiction and betrayal trauma. Why is it important?
So that we know what we're doing.
Oh,
So
tell
that
me
we,
more.
yeah. Um, I think about something I just said to some clients the other day. I was working with a couple. The man is in recovery from sex addiction and had betrayed his wife. And um, he began talking to her about something that had happened between them, and he was explaining his intention. Well, and his intention was not to, you know, leave her out of this thing and hurt her feelings about this thing and all that, right? And it wasn't it, right? And we had to pause that conversation and have a little discussion that intention does not necessarily um, excuse a negative impact from
Right.
what we've done right now. Okay, in a different way, but parallel enough that I think this works. If I can have great intentions for treating someone who's a sex addict or has compulsive sexual behavior problems or betrayal trauma, and my heart's in the right place and I
Yeah.
want to do it, but what if I'm not actually helping? What if I don't actually understand what the real problem is, or where the problem comes from, or what is most effective, treatment A or treatment B, or understanding different nuances as to why A versus B would be more effective for this person. My intention can be in the right place, but maybe I actually, need a little more knowledge to
Yeah.
pair with that intention so that the work I'm doing can be effective. That's what research can help us with.
When you say that, the thing that comes to mind is we just are on the tail end of completing and publishing a lot of research around the genomes
Yes.
that show up and how the genomes for
Hmm.
sex addicts are different from the general population, and also the neurobiology of what's
Yeah.
going on with sex addicts. And one of the things that is coming out of that research is this very clear understanding that reward deficiency syndrome, which we see with a lot of addictions, we see it with depression and anxiety, and a lot of that stuff that neurologically actually changes the way the brain functions, is one of the things that we're seeing very prominently in people who are struggling with sex addiction. And when we understand, oh, there's a neurological piece here,
Right.
you know, their ability to move their focus away from something that their addict brain is hyper focused on is
Yeah.
significantly impaired. Their ability to contain their behavior is significantly impaired. Their ability to sort of lean into relational empathy has
Hmm.
been neurologically impaired. And
That's
when we
right.
understand that, the way that we approach and treat them is very different because, if I'm going to tell somebody, hey, don't do that, you shouldn't
Hmm.
do that, it's a very different conversation than saying, look, neurologically, you think your brain is a sports car and you
Right.
think it's going to corner on rails and you think it's going to stop on a dime. And the reality is, because of the neurology of your brain, it's a loaded moving van.
Mm.
And you have to consciously live your life knowing that you're not going to, navigate around those corners well, and you're going to have to stop yourself well before you think you do. And
Yes.
and when we understand sort of the research behind that, and that's just the neurology, there are plenty of other places, it
Right.
really does help us to know what are we dealing with, and
Yeah.
so how do we most effectively help the people that we're treating?
Absolutely. Something that we do here at Daring Ventures, and everybody, I am probably not competitive to a fault. Okay, so I don't mean this like, oh, this is how we do it and this is the best way, but it's just something we've learned.
Hmm.
We started getting these referrals, lots of referrals from other CSATs who were saying like, look, I've done my darndest trying to help this person, and we're not making progress. Maybe y'all can help. And so we began to kind of do our own internal research. What's going on? I had conversations with other clinicians on the team, and we were observant. And this is probably about 5 years ago now, 5, 6 years ago. And we had about four of these guys who had been referred to us under similar circumstances.
Uh-huh.
And we're looking at them and we're going, okay, this is interesting. All four of these guys have a very specific presentation of
Mm.
the sexual acting out. And it's all, we don't see the sort of progression that we normally see. These guys have acted out for a long time in this very clearly defined box in a very highly ritualistic way. And we start digging and digging. Turns out all four of them met criteria for obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
Oh, fascinating.
And then, and then we say, okay, well, let's do research on treatment for that. We figured out, okay, how do we treat the compulsive sexual behaviors alongside, parallel with OCPD? All four, all four had improvement and eventually got sober and
Yeah.
into recovery. That's a small scale. That's just our little practice,
Hmm.
trying to put our heads together. But, afar in organizations like that that are doing much larger pieces of research with much more, integrity academically, clinically, the kind of insights that we get so that we can ask better questions,
Yeah.
know better where to look, what rocks do we want to turn over, and then align conceptualization and diagnosis and treatment around that, it's only going to be to the betterment of the people we're serving.
Yeah. No, I mean, back in the day, the research was sort of very gathering up the stories and what are the common
Mhm.
themes that we're seeing with sex addicts. And then
Right,
we were able to do more research on, what actually is contributing to positive outcomes. And
right.
what are we seeing that shows up with, sex addicts who have like solid, consistent sobriety? What's going on there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there was some initial research done about disclosure. I actually think that there's a woman doing a graduate study right now
Yes,
that is doing more research because we need more research on
that's right.
disclosure. Is it effective? What are the aspects that are effective? What do we recommend? I mean, we have a lot of clinical insight, but that
Yes.
other piece is really important. And there's all these things. I
Yeah.
know that in our practice, we have always felt very strongly about being on the cutting edge,
Hmm.
understanding the neurology,
Right.
understanding the trauma pieces, understanding the hyper focus that comes and what gets in the way. Um,
Hmm.
because the more that we understand, and like you said, the more research that's being done, what are the common themes that are coming into sex addicts who are walking in the door?
Right.
How do we identify that group? What
That's right.
what are the interventions that are most helpful? How when we see cravings, that's not the word I'm looking for. When we see withdrawal,
Mm-hmm.
how does that show up with sex addicts? And is there something that we can do to help them move through that withdrawal experience more quickly?
Yeah.
All of that research is so essential for us to do this work.
That's right. And you just outlined, this progression from, okay, it's sort of like a guru based theory, right? All the people who
Uh,
actually do this and are experts, they come together, they pool their knowledge, which is important. That's actually how any sort of domain begins to develop a literature, right?
mhm.
Is that more sort of qualitative approach to research, just trying to understand the phenomenology of it as best we can. And then based on that, and then we can start asking sharper questions and doing more of the quantitative and more objective sort of research. That's a natural linear progression in the development of any body of research. And so I say that to say, I know our intention isn't to say, well, they used to not do it right and we do
Oh
it
no.
better. No, it's not that. It's like we're standing on their shoulders. We're grateful,
Oh,
so grateful for that work. And now, because of the work they did, now we get to come along and build on that and improve upon it. And um, and begin to understand these little nuances, like you said. I think that one of the fields that is sort of parallel, where I think we're learning it's parallel. I'm curious to see how the genome study
Hmm.
reflects this or not. Is like I remember learning about gambling addiction,
Yeah.
and there's just two very clear like subcategories of people who struggle with problematic gambling. And there's sort of this high intensity, these are going to be your blackjack players, your, craps shooters. And then there's this lower sort of numbed out, these are the ones just pulling the lever or mashing the button on the video machine. Totally different things going on in the brain, needing totally different treatments.
Yeah.
I, I, I would almost guarantee you there's something similar going on among sex addicts, right? The
Yep.
subtypes of sex addiction. Yeah.
Well, I think there's the other piece is that gambling has become such an online activity that people sit on their cell phone, which to
Yeah.
me feels very similar to the pornography addiction.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that there's all of that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And, as we understand stuff and move forward, I mean, when I started doing this work, the standard treatment was we don't do couples therapy for the first 2 or 3 years.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we work individually, we get everybody solid, and then we bring them together because we can't do that. And, we don't do that anymore. It
No.
just absolutely wasn't working, and we've got research that suggests that that's not helpful.
Right. Right.
So we
Yeah.
keep making that progress. One of the areas, and I want to dig into this, that I think that we are it feels like we're very much on the cusp, sort of
Mhm.
the wise minds who've been in this area are coming together and pooling their knowledge and sort of doing some qualitative work,
Mhm.
and we're starting to move into more quantitative work, is betrayal trauma.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know that, you're involved with AppSats. I'm
Mhm.
involved with AFAR. We're
Mhm.
starting to partner to
Yes.
to see how where that goes. But what
Right.
what is some of the stuff that you're looking forward to or that you expect to have an impact on the field as betrayal trauma research starts to come more consistently online?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes up for me with that question is just how far I think the field has come in a relatively short period of time.
Hmm.
I did my CSAT training 2013. I started it. I think I finished 2014. So somewhere right in there. And betrayal trauma, the idea that the discovery of betrayal is traumatic, it was given, I think it was on a slide.
Yeah.
you know, but it was kind of plugged into a more traditional model that did, frankly, pathologize, betrayed partners, kind of lump them together. And now, ITAB, the same organization, has a whole certification on betrayal trauma, and they've totally changed that whole module in the CSAT training. That's not very long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking 12,
And
13 years ago.
yeah, at most.
At most, at most. And that is, I want people to appreciate the speed of the change there. It's stunning if you actually like take a step back and look at how this usually works in fields,
Hmm.
different fields. This is a very fast change, which is really good news. Really good news. Um, So that's good. So now there is more attention. There is Ann Cannon is who you were talking about earlier, a doctoral student who's doing research on betrayal. I've got some doctoral students who are going to be doing work on um, betrayal trauma. One of the things that I'm really hoping we get some research on, and I want to give credit where it's due to Dorit Reichenthal and
Hmm.
Janice Caudle, who I heard present about this at the AppSets conference recently. They brought to my mind there's actually this body of research on something called PTED,
Uh,
post-traumatic embitterment disorder,
oh, fascinating.
as differentiated from PTSD. And whereas PTSD is a fear, threat-based response, PTED is the result of moral injury.
Oh,
of anger that has not been able to be discharged and has hardened into embitterment. And there's a hypersensitivity to anything that feels like injustice. I'll tell you why I'm so excited about this.
oh yeah.
I've worked with so many betrayed partners. This is not true of every betrayed partner at all, but there were these certain betrayed partners where there was this heightened sensitivity, this exquisite tenderness to anything that felt like another moral injury, another injustice, another lie. It's all around sort of this standard of morality. And they would just chandelier. I mean, they just hit the ceiling if something even grazed on that. And I'll just be super real and vulnerable with folks. I didn't know how to help them.
Hmm.
So here's an example, right? My intention was good and right. And I was using the only tools I had in my toolkit, the only concepts that I had at my disposal. Here I was trying to treat this thing like PTSD and through a trauma lens, and it was something totally different.
Yeah.
And thankfully, there's a little bit of research on this, but most of it exists not in the betrayal realm. And so, like, I'm hoping somebody who hears this will go, yeah, I need to do research on that. In fact,
Yeah.
there is somebody doing research on that. Laurie Hall, past president of APSAT, she's doing some work on that.
Very cool. I have often felt that, we have identified here are the different sort of flavors of sex
Hmm.
addicts.
Hmm.
And I've often felt that there are different flavors of partners. And
100%.
and we as a field haven't identified that. So when they come in, we
100%.
still like we used to pathologize them as, the co-addict or the codependent.
Right?
We don't pathologize, but we still just lump them in the same group of, oh, you're a partner, so this is how it applies to you, as opposed to understanding sort of what's the
Yeah.
flavor of your
Yeah.
betrayal or your experience and how is it showing up for you? Because some partners have very little reactive betrayal and they're very able to stay present, and others have that big pain, PTSD, and like you said, some have that embitterment, and
Yep.
understanding the different flavors would be so helpful.
Yeah. I worked with a couple this week. I had spent 2 6-hour days with a couple and very different presentation for both of them. Now, there is some research around this, um, and it also is true anecdotally when I look at my own clinical experience. When I'm working with a couple, and when if the male, if it's a, male female couple, and the male has done the betraying and the woman has been betrayed, most of the time, the man's attachment style leans more in that sort of dismissive, avoidant quadrant. And most of the time, the betrayed partner's attachment style is more anxious, preoccupied.
Hmm.
And so much of the literature that's out there, the workbooks, the material, the podcasts, all of that, and I'm guilty of what I'm about to say. I've done this too. Does exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah.
So now the way we describe the behaviors, right? It's not just about, you know, person in recovery, person who's been betrayed and their behaviors. Y- You know, we lump in all of these other aspects. Well, this couple I worked with this week, it was reversed.
Yeah.
The woman was dismissive and avoidant. The
Hmm.
man was preoccupied, anxious. It was an entirely different experience in this room
Yeah.
than what I normally see. That betrayed partner, she actually said to me, everyone keeps asking me about being hypervigilant. I haven't been hypervigilant at all, which fits that attachment style, right? And so that's another example of where I think there needs to be a lot more research on how does attachment style,
Yeah.
you know, affect presentation, symptomology, etiology, all of it.
Yeah. So important. Exactly. That's why we need to do research. We need to keep doing the research in sex addiction. We need
Mm-hmm.
to sort of dig in and take
Mm-hmm.
the research around betrayal trauma to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
I think both all those things are just going to help us to so much more effectively help the
Yeah.
people impacted by these.
That's right.
experiences.
That's right. I mean, I'm there's a whole lot out there, a lot of discussion out there right now about male betrayed partners,
Oh yeah.
right? But it's
Oh,
all like it's to my knowledge, it's all just guesswork at this point.
yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of clinical evidence that they present differently, they have very different experiences, but you're right. I don't think we have any research that actually classifies or characterizes or gives us actual data on what we're seeing.
What are we actually seeing? What is actually different? Why are there differences? Are these biological? Are these social? Is it based on social messaging? Is it, is it both? How much? What, there's tons of questions out there about that. I mean, I'm actually, because I'm researching, not doing original research. I'm trying to see what is out there. I'm trying to pay attention. I'm trying to ask people who work more with betrayed males. And I'm actually coming to this conclusion that there's actually a whole lot more overlap and similarity,
Yeah,
right? But then we need to isolate, okay, so then what are the differences? Because then we can begin to hone and target our
right.
interventions better, more effectively.
And what we keep coming back to, which is not that the treatment people are offering to male betrayed partners or to sex addicts right now is
Mhm.
bad. It's
No,
not
no,
bad. But as we do the research and we better understand where are the overlaps, what are the differences, what are the nuances, where is this coming from, what is really at the core that is
yeah,
driving this, the treatment we offer just be taken to another level and can be that much
absolutely.
more effective.
That's right. That's right. 100%. I mean, I'm I was telling my wife got wanting to do this training program. She says, "Well, tell me about it." And I have not done like a long training program in a while because I had to take a break. It
Hmm.
was becoming compulsive, maybe. So it's been a while, and I said, "Well, it's a more involved training." And she said, "Tell me about it." I said, "Well, it's a 3-year program." She goes, 3 years. She's like, "Why do you want to do that?" But because I want to keep learning and growing. I
Yeah.
don't want to assume, oh, you know what, the help I give, it's good enough. It's helping people enough. No, like I want to keep growing.
Yeah.
That's just me as an individual, but that's the heart of this field too.
Oh, it
We want to
absolutely
keep
is.
growing.
I mean, I know the different areas. It's like I need to sort of like buff up over there.
Yeah,
That's my next focus in my next training. We're
right,
constantly doing that.
right, right.
So, talking of treatment,
Uh-huh.
tell me about Daring Ventures. What do you guys offer? What do you do? How can people find you?
Yeah. So Daring Ventures, it was a practice I started it in 2017. The name Daring Ventures, I lifted out of a quote by John Bowlby. So John Bowlby's
Yeah.
known as the father of attachment theory, a British psychologist of the 20th century, and he said, "Life is best organized as a series of daring ventures from a secure base."
Ah,
And so much of the work we do, which really comes from a lot of it starts from my own recovery story. So I'm a man in recovery myself. I read a book early on in my recovery called Addiction as an Attachment Disorder.
mm-hmm.
It was incredibly helpful to me. Philip Flores. I still think it's an amazing book in a lot of ways. And so this lens of attachment really was formative for me. And it's infused through what we do at Daring Ventures. So we come through a very relational lens, whether we're working with someone individually or as a couple, to come alongside them, try to walk with them, toward healing. We do that through all sorts of things. We do ongoing care of therapy. We have coaches that work with us as well. Probably what we're known for the most is our intensives.
Mm-hmm.
We do disclosure intensives, but not just that. We actually have a process where a couple can apply to work with us. There are a lot of hoops to jump through because we do a lot of assessment up front, research based, peer reviewed, assessments because we want to really understand that couple and then take what we've learned and design an experience for them. Um, and so we do these customized couples intensives to help people maybe on a point where they're stuck or try to transition from one phase into another phase of their recovery process. We do that with people individually and as a couple.
I
So that's something we do.
I remember we were talking one time and you have a different approach when it doing because of the couples work that you're doing.
Hmm.
And for many of us, when we're doing this work, it's like, okay, I'm working with the addict. And so
Hmm.
I'm helping the addict to find their way and to heal and for them to be okay in their own skin, regardless of what happens. And we're
Yes.
working with the partner to help them heal and help them be okay in their own skin, regardless of what happens. And we're doing everything we can to help the coupleship survive and so they can communicate and find their way through. But it's really a model of we're helping the individual to thrive
Hmm.
and we're doing what we can to help the coupleship make it forward.
Yes,
When you do couples work, you flip that.
I do. So the model that I've been working on for several years now, I call couple-centered recovery.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing I always say in in a venue or setting like this is it's not for everybody. And we turn people down. What we do. Both people need to be in it. They need to get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. Um, and and so if there's any ongoing abuse, that's not going to work. If if the person who committed the betrayal is not ready to really lean into that relationship, that's not going to work. If so there's again, this isn't for everybody, but if you've got these two people and they both say it is important to us to save this relationship if we can. If they're both saying that, then we're actually going to make that coupleship the primary client. And what that means is, yeah, there's still individual work that they need to do, but but the guiding principle is if it's not good for this relationship, it's not good for me. Now, guess what? The betraying partner leads the way in that because the betrayed partner is going to step back and go, really? All right, do you mean that? Can you really live by that? Here's what often happens when it's the other way around. And I had someone in my office recently who had done extensive recovery work, good recovery work, but he heard things like you need to keep your own side of the street clean.
Oh,
We've heard that one. We've talked about that one.
we have talked
Uh,
about that.
it's your recovery, not hers. Things like that. Um, and so and I understand what's meant by those things. I'm not trying to, villainize anyone who says those things. I can understand the good intention behind it, but the
Hmm.
effect sometimes is okay, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do my recovery over here. And what does that look like? Well, these people, I've got my sponsor, I've got my home group. They know everything about me. I give them my first step. I tell them everything. I'm learning to be transparent over there. And also, I'm part of we know part of what makes 12 step effective is that you actually sort of submit yourself to the program, right? And how it works in the big book of AA, it's like you have to give yourself over to this program,
Hmm.
wholeheartedly to this program, right? So it's like I'm not the be all end all of my life anymore. I'm putting myself underneath this other sort of authority in a
Yeah.
way, right? Okay, I'm going to see myself as part of something larger. Okay. What if you took those two things? Because those are the two mechanisms of action that research shows make 12 steps effective. There are people who know my whole story and I'm submitting to something larger. What if I did that in my marriage?
Yeah.
What if I tell my wife everything and I decide that if it's not good for my marriage, it's not good for me? I never have to choose between what's best for my marriage and what's best for me because if it's bad for my marriage, it's bad for me. Now, of course, there are limitations to that. I'm not talking about staying in an abusive relationship. I'm not, right? But as general guiding principles. And what we found is that it's harder. It's messier. Okay. But talk about an incubator for growth.
Yeah.
because now those principles that I live out, a couple times a week when I go to my 12-step meetings, I get the opportunity to live them out every night when I come home to my partner. Now, there's lots of structure that needs to be put in place around that and tools and scaffolding around how do you share and what does it mean to be honest and what is helpful to share and not and all of those sorts of things. But we've seen some amazing results when people sort of throw themselves into that.
That's really exciting. I mean, if it's a fit for the couple, it is.
Right. If
If
it's a
it's a
fit
fit
for
for
the
the couple,
couple.
I'm sure that it's just profound.
Yeah, yeah. I've had folks come in and say, there's this one couple in particular that I always think of. They had done, if I'm remembering right, like 2.5 years of individual work. They had not done a single couple session in 2.5 years.
Yeah,
They had done incredible individual work. Like their individual therapists are clearly, to me, stellar clinicians. Their marriage was in shambles because the paradigm of most individual therapists, and I mean, I do, if I'm seeing someone individually, if you're my client, one of my goals is to help you eliminate suffering from your life. And if you come in and every week I'm hearing how much suffering is happening at home because of your partner, that is going to affect the work we do
yeah,
and what I say, even if I'm trying to be non-directive. We
yeah,
know, right? But a couples therapist recognizes um, you're married to another human being. He or she will always be a pain in your ass, but they're your pain in the ass.
yeah.
Right? It's a whole different paradigm. The elimination of suffering is not, we don't just cut off things that, right? And so that tweak of paradigm with this couple that I was talking about, 2.5 years of individual work, good work, they had to unlearn. They had to unlearn some of what they had learned in their individual work and begin actually sort of prioritizing their marriage
Yeah.
above their individuality to begin to heal that relationship. And they're
Yeah.
doing great now.
That's awesome. And so if
Yeah,
people want to find you, where can they find you? We'll put the link to your website
sure.
underneath the video here, but
Sure. Two best places to go would be drjakeporter.com and daringventures.com.
awesome.
Yeah. Find pretty much everything through those two sites right there.
Uh, Always a pleasure. I always
Yeah.
enjoy
Same.
our time to chat.
Same, Tim. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Cool. Well, you take care. Thank you so much and be well, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you.